Hi. In this project, what I'd like to do is I'd like to cover some of the dangers of physical access. There's often we leave our machines in positions where maybe custodians or people can come up and touch the machine. I really want to talk about the dangers if somebody could put a CD into the machine, use a bootable operating system. There's even bootable thumb drives. There's specific hardware that when you plug in the thumb drive, it'll do keystrokes and also record keystrokes. So there's different dangers with physical access. What I want to do is I want to start by powering on my Tiger box. Now, a Tiger box is just a computer that's got multiple operating systems on it. Now, currently, we're going to hack this machine. I powered my machine on. I'm just going to open my console. And as soon as I powered it on, it comes up to what looks like a Windows 7 machine. So I'm just going to go full screen here by doing a Control, Alt, and an Enter. So I get into full screen mode. And I'm going to try to log on. So I'm going to do a Control, Alt. Even though it's saying delete, I need to press the Insert key because the Control, Alt, Delete will be sent to my machine. So there's different users on here. I'm just going to pick student because I think I could probably guess the student password. So student, and that's not it. So I see the hint is password, so I'll do password. All right, capital P. Okay, I'll do FVTC. So basically, I'm trying to brute force. I'm guessing a bunch of different passwords. I could sit here all day and I probably would never get the password. So that's one technique, is just by randomly trying things, using password hints to try to get access. So at this point, we really don't know what the password is. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a bootable CD-ROM. So we're going to pop a CD into the tray, and then when we reboot the machine, it'll boot into a watered down version of Linux. Now basically, when we're running that version of Linux, it's the equivalent of pulling the hard drive out of the machine and shoving it into another machine. When we do that, we have access to all that data. So for example, if my sister's computer crashed and she can't boot it up, and she comes over to my house with her computer and says, all my photos are on this machine and I need to get my photos back, I'm not going to try to restore her machine or re-image it because she'll lose all that data. The first thing I would do would be pull the hard drive out, put her hard drive into my computer, and then power on my computer. I log into my computer, and my computer's got a C drive, which is my operating system. Now my sister's C drive is now my D drive. It's like a data drive. And then I can peruse through all of her stuff and copy her images and copy her videos and put that all onto a CD, and then I could re-image her machine if I wanted to. But basically it's taking what was her operating system and treating it as a data drive. That's exactly what we're going to do right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out of full screen mode so that way I can get to my CD. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop a CD in. So I'm going to press this, and I want to connect up to an ISO image on a data store. I would recommend doing it this way. It'll be a lot faster. So I need to get to the classes, DVDs, and CDs. So I've already downloaded some stuff for you. So if you go into the T_images, if I double click on that, there should be a folder in here called ethical hacking. If I go into the ethical hacking folder, right there, in here I organized a bunch of different tools, different software. So I'm going to go inside the tools, and inside the tools, I'm going to use a tool called NtPasswd ISO. So you can download this off the internet. It's a free open source tool that somebody wrote. So now I popped the CD in. So I'm going to go back to full screen mode. I'm going to do a Control Insert, so that way I can. Oh, I'm sorry, Control Enter so I can see everything full screen. Over here in this little right hand corner, what I want to do is I just want to do a restart. So I'm going to restart this operating system. Now keep in mind, I just popped that CD in, even though it's an ISO image and it's on a data store. Basically, that's the equivalent of taking that CD and shoving it into the CD tray, and we restarted the computer. So I can just, at the boot screen, I can just hit enter, all right, and that'll boot me into this tool. So now the operating system is running off of our CD. That is basically like the new C drive. And what was our C drive, which kept everyone's username and password, like student, and we didn't know what the password was, that's now in the data drive. So the very first question it's asking us here is it's saying, here are the possible window installations, and it only has one in here, which is number 1, and it's the SDA2. So that is basically saying, hey, we found something, it looks like a Windows installation, do you want to use it? So right now I've got my cursor and I can press 1. I really wouldn't have to press the 1 key because right next to where I typed there are square brackets with a 1 in the middle. That's the default. So if I didn't press anything, it would assume 1. So I'm just going to hit enter here. And now it did a whole bunch of something, and now I see my next question saying which part of the registry to load. So they're giving us different options here. One is to do a password reset and then SAM. Well, that's where all our passwords are held on our Windows machine. Otherwise, I could do, it looks like I could do like a recovery console, or I could load some other stuff. But I know that I want a password reset. So I'm going to select 1, and 1 is already by default. So I see the square brackets with a 1. So really all I need to do is hit enter again. And now I'm to the next option where it is I can 1, edit the user data and password. Otherwise I could 2, list the group. So I've got more options. 1 again is the default, and it's going to be the edit user data and password. So I'm going to go with 1 again. So I'm just going to press enter. Okay, so at this point, it listed all of our users. So as I look at the users, there's different columns here. The one is the RID, which is basically the memory address of what the user is, and then the user's name. And then the next column over is if it's disabled, or if it's locked, or if it's an administrator. And I can see that administrator is an administrator, but student is an administrator as well. So I didn't see administrator when I tried logging in. I saw a whole bunch of different user names, and student was the one that I chose. And I can see that student is an admin, so that's the one that I'm going to target. So over here, my RID is 03E8. And I can see my default is the 3E8. So I can just press enter, and that's going to automatically be the student account. So right now, basically, our old C drive is now being read by the Linux operating system, and it pulled all of this into memory. So it's got the SAM file in memory, and it's now listing all the content. So I'm just going to press enter. And now I've got different options. So the way that the passwords are stored, currently the passwords are stored in a hash. And we'll talk about hashing later in the semester. Basically, it's a one-way cipher that really isn't easy to decrypt. And decrypt isn't even the right word, because a hash is just a one-way algorithm. And we'll talk about that more later. So what we can do is we can use the algorithm to create a new password. So for example, if my password was password and I ran it through the hashing algorithm, every time I would run the word password through that algorithm, the hash would always look identical. Now we don't know, we can't really undo the hash, but we could take a different word, run it through the algorithm, and we know what it would look like. So we could actually overwrite that student password with a new password. The other option is we could clear or blank the user password, so we wouldn't even have to type a password. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to blank it out. So I'm just going to press 1, and I'm going to hit enter. And at this point, it cleared out that password, I'm assuming. Um, so what I'm going to do is I am going to want to quit. So by default the Q is there, so I'm just going to hit enter. Okay, so at this point I'm going to want to quit again. Alright, so out of the list I don't want to rerun anything. I just want to get out of here. So I'm going to press the Q again to quit. Okay, so I need to write these changes back. So right now we basically reached into the data drive, which was really the primary C drive, pulled that same file into memory, we read the contents of it, now we change the contents of it in the Linux memory, and what we're going to do is we're going to write that back into the real SAM file. So I'm just going to press Y here. Yes, I do want to write it back. I'm going to do lowercase y. Just be careful. You can't like type in yes. There's not a lot of forgiveness with some of these Linux tools. It'll if you hit the wrong key or accidentally hit a space bar with the Y, it may throw it into what's called a kernel panic, where you're just going to have to rerun it if it crashes like that. So I'm going to write it back. Yes, I'm going to hit enter. And it says edit is complete. Do you want to run again? So what I need to do at this point is I need to take a screenshot. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up Word. I'm going to grab a screenshot of this screen, so that way that's going to be what I'm going to hand in. So I'm going to get out of the full screen mode. So I can't like move my mouse right now to get up to the little tiger box. So I'm going to do a Control and the Alt. I'm going to press both Control and Alt at the same time. And now I get my cursor back. So when you're in some of these windows, it's hard to break out of it. So at this point I did the Control and the Alt. Now I'm free, so I'm going to press the double window. And I'm going to open up Word. So I've got WordPad. Would have been probably a little bit nicer if I would have had Microsoft Word, but I've got WordPad. So what I want to do is I want to just grab a screenshot of this. So what I normally do is I just grab this tiger box and I grab it up here by this blue window so I can see it. I kind of move it around a little bit. And then what I can do is I can do the screen print. So you can do like Alt screen print or even just screen print. Even if you get the whole window, it doesn't matter. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to capture that screenshot. So this is going to be the screenshot that I'm going to submit with my homework. So at this point I've got my screenshot, so I'm just going to minimize this. And I'm going to go back into here. It looks like I accidentally typed something in. I'm just going to go back to full screen so I can see it. It looks like I've got some additional characters. I need to click inside of there so I can backspace those characters out. And I'm just going to continue with this. Would you want to run this again? New run. I'm going to say no. I'm going to hit enter. So at this point I can reboot my machine, but I need to pop that disk out. So to get the disk out, I'm going to have to get out of full screen, which now I'm regretting putting it in full screen. But I'm just going to, from here, disconnect. I'm going to go to my CD, and I can see that I can disconnect image, data store image. So I'm just going to click on that, and it's saying, do you want to disconnect? I'm going to say yes. Now it's going to take a couple seconds for it to actually disconnect. I can't just assume that it's done. What I do just to make sure is I click on it, and if I can see that I've got my menu where I can select a new image, now I know that it's still there. To get that to pop back away, I just click here in this gray area. So now from here I can just click inside this black window, and to do a reboot I'm going to do a Control Alt Insert. Normally you do a Control Alt Delete, but in the VMware we're going to do that Control Alt Insert. So at this point we're restarting Windows, and hopefully we can now log in as that student even though we didn't know that password. I'm just going to try to log into the Windows 7 machine by doing a Control Alt Insert, and I'm going to select the student, and now it's not prompting me for a password. I am on as an administrator on this machine. So that's part one. I'm just going to stop the video and then we'll pick up part two in a minute.